Voting is underway in New York before Election Day next week, with the city on the cusp of getting a Democratic Socialist as mayor. Zohran Mamdani receiving big-ticket support from Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as his campaign enters its final stretch. The 34-year-old Muslim, who is the son of Indian immigrants, pitched his candidacy as a force to take on billionaires and oligarchs who have poured money supporting his opponents. Take a listen to Mamdani summing up his campaign.
We are going to freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants and use every resource at our disposal to build housing for everyone who needs it. We are going to eliminate the fare on every single bus line and make what are currently the slowest buses in the nation move around this city with ease. And we are going to create universal childcare at no cost to parents.
We can now bring in Reinfowitz, SUNY Distinguished Professor of History at SUNY Empire State University. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. Mamdani's message has remained the same: free buses, freezing the rent, universal childcare. Has his ability to come this far, is it because he's made this entire campaign about affordability?
Affordability is first and foremost on Americans' minds and on New Yorkers' minds. And there's no question that Mamdani has done a good job. He's a very charismatic candidate, but he also has some substance to him. The issues that you mentioned around affordability are, they are resonating with New Yorkers. Now, other candidates could have talked about that. So obviously, it's not just the message; it's also the messenger. But he hit on the right issues. He has discussed other things over the course of his career, in particular about foreign policy and Israel. But he has smartly emphasized in this campaign the affordability issues rather than those other more extraneous issues, at least things that are less on the minds of New York City voters.
What do you make of the lukewarm endorsement he's received from mainstream Democrats?
That's about national strategy, and there's a lot about this mayor's race that's about national U.S. politics. If you are a New York City Democrat, if you've got a national stage and you are more moderate, somebody like Hakeem Jeffries, who's the minority leader in the House, who's from Brooklyn, New York, he's got to be very wary of being seen as being too far to the left. So that's why his endorsement, which came very late, was Kamala Harris endorsed Mamdani, but did so without mentioning his name. Then you've got other more left Democrats, like the people that the report mentioned, AOC, Bernie Sanders. These are Mamdani's natural allies. They are on the left of the Democratic Party. But for most Democrats, Mamdani is too far to the left to play well outside of very liberal areas like New York.
Because it seems he didn't even need the mainstream Republicans to have his back, considering he had the likes of Elizabeth Warren, AOC, and Sanders.
Well, it's a question of whether those mainstream Democrats in New York specifically would come out either against him or give permission by not endorsing him for moderate Democrats to go ahead and vote for Andrew Cuomo. I think that was really the key. If somebody like Governor Hochul, who was Cuomo's lieutenant governor and advanced and ascended to the governor's seat when Cuomo resigned a few years ago, if she, for example, had stayed out of the race and not endorsed Mamdani, I think that would have been a boost to Cuomo. In Cuomo, you have somebody who can really only win if many middle-of-the-road Democrats were to stay with him and not go with the Democratic nominee, who is Mamdani. He has he had the support of a majority of Democratic primary voters. So Cuomo is trying to thread a very thin line almost in between left-wing Democrats and then the Republicans like Curtis Sliwa, who are staying in the race. With Sliwa in the race, it's almost impossible for Cuomo to win. But he would have needed somebody like Hochul to give permission for middle-of-the-road Democrats to vote for him rather than Mamdani.
Now, in the past, an immigrant or a person of an immigrant background running for public office, I'm thinking of the likes of Bobby Jindal with the Republican Party, who went ahead and anglicized his name. Zohran Mamdani hasn't needed to do all of that. He's a proud Muslim. He speaks about this. He puts out ads on social media in Hindi, even in Bengali. He eats biryani with his hands. But then again, he can walk across the entire island of Manhattan and speak to ordinary New Yorkers. Have times changed, or can he only do this because it's New York and New York is so diverse?
Well, there are a couple of ways of looking at it, right? New York is different from certainly Louisiana. We also, all right, on the other hand, we do have the example of Barack Obama. And himself is not, not an immigrant, but had a name that is not anglicized. Not only did he, win election to the U.S. Senate, he became, of course, president of the United States. So I think things have changed. They probably changed, in that direction, maybe 20, 30 years ago. Certainly Mamdani can follow in the footsteps of Barack Obama in having not changed his name. But Mamdani has done, I think, has more room to emphasize his, let's say, non-U.S. roots or non-Christian roots, which is, even beyond where Obama was, certainly because of the liberal nature of New York City, which is a city of immigrants.
Donald Trump will no doubt be watching what happens come next week. Do you think he'll go out of his way to make Mamdani's life hell? Yeah,
probably. Having said that, would he treat New York City that much differently under Andrew Cuomo's mayoralty if that were to come to be, which I don't think is going to happen? I don't think it would be that much of a difference. I think he sees more Mamdani as a useful foil for campaign rhetoric. I think he's going to do what he wants to do to New York City, no matter who's the mayor.
What do you make of what Mamdani's message is, essentially? Because you do have billionaires who are still funding his opponents, doing everything they can to keep him from office. Essentially, they are making his argument for him.
Right. Well, that's the issue, right? It's good to have the right enemies. If there is a sentiment that billionaires have too much power, and the billionaires are the ones arguing against you, well, then, it's pretty self-evident who the candidate is of the rest of the people. Mamdani is very clearly coming from the perspective, going back 10, 15 years to that of the 99% versus the 1%, Bernie Sanders. The real question is, what kind of economic policies can he push through on things like taxes, where he has to go through the New York state government to change city taxes in New York? It's not going to be easy.
I want to ask about the Democratic Party and what this race tells us about the Democratic Party as a whole, because I understand what you said about Hakeem Jeffries not wanting to seem too progressive or too far to the left, but that at the end of the day, throughout this whole election campaign, he said he's having discussions with Mamdani. He gave this very, very last-minute endorsement. But at the end of the day, what do the Democrats want? Do they want to dither around and not continue to be in disarray, or stand for something?
Right. Well, it's a question of what they stand for. Zohran Mamdani is not going to be the leader of the Democratic Party in the United States of America. He is one person who could be very useful to people like Trump to say, this is what Democrats are. We've been saying all along, they're socialists. On the other hand, there's a question of what their message is, right? So they have to have a countering message, and it's going to be hard for them to have one nationally, at least until we get closer to the midterm elections, and you can have a nationalized election, even if it's in various congressional districts or states. The Democrats have had people like AOC and Bernie Sanders on the left, and they've had people, as well as Elizabeth Warren, and they've had people over the last few years like Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Kamala Harris, who are more centrist Democrats or center-left Democrats. There is a struggle for what Democrats are going to be nationally. They're not going to be Zohran Mamdani's party. The question is how much of Zohran Mamdani's image being front and center really hurts Democrats. Republicans think that they can use him as a weapon.